everybody, it's Sarah, and today I'm here with my wrap-up for this round of Tome Topple, and it was simultaneously one of my best rounds in Tome Topple and one of my worst rounds. One of my best rounds because I read a total of 3 books and over 2,000 pages, which is a lot. I don't think I have read that amount of pages in ages, and that rhymed. That was unintentional, I'm sorry. And also it was one of my best rounds because I think it's the first time that I managed to finish all of the challenges, which usually there was one challenge that was to read a graphic novel tome, and I never did that, so I never finished at least one of the challenges. But it was also one of my worst rounds of Tome Topple because I don't think I ever gave the books that I read like this low of an average rating. Out of the 3 books that I read, I had only one 3-star. The second one was a 2-star, and then I also had a 1-star book. So like, not great in terms of enjoyment. But anyway, let me just get into what I read for Tome Topple. The first book that I picked up was Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas, which is the 6th book in the Throne of Glass series, and it has been on my shelf for 2 years because I bought it when it came out and then never started it. And I had a few reasons for that. The first reason for that was that I had just enjoyed each of the books that I read by Sarah J. Maas less and less of the last few books. So I was kind of like hesitant to go into this. And the second one was that I knew that we would follow Kaol and Nesrin in this book, and I hadn't liked Nesrin when she was introduced. I still don't particularly like her, in fact. And I had liked Kaol less and less ever since the first book. In the first book, he was my favorite character in the series, aside from Nehemia, but yeah. Kaol was my favorite male character in the first book, and then I kind of had some problems with him in the second book. I had more problems with him in the third book, and I didn't like him anymore in the fourth book. So yeah, I didn't know what I would feel like going into a book that was just like about characters that I don't like. However, I quite enjoyed the reading experience, like now that my kind of pink glasses when it comes to Sarah J. Maas are gone. Because of multiple reasons, which I don't want to get into, but mainly it has to do with Anne Bishop and the Black Jewels. But anyway, now that my pink glasses are gone, I can just legitimately say that her writing style isn't the greatest. She isn't the greatest when it comes to twists, and it's just like her writing seems kind of pretentious. Like it pretends to be a better fantasy book than it is, and there's nothing wrong with being an average fantasy book, but like, I don't know if I'm explaining it in the right way. But anyway, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I gave it a solid 3 stars. There wasn't anything special about the book, but there wasn't anything wrong with the book either. I generally enjoyed my reading experience, and I liked Kaol more than I remembered, but I still didn't like Nesrin. So yeah, that's it with the first book that I finished, which of course finished the challenge to read a book that is part of a series. I forgot to say that at the beginning, I think. And then I had a dilemma, and that dilemma was to just go and finish the second book that I had picked up for Tome Topple, or to go to the bookstore and pick up the last book in the Throne of Glass series, Kingdom of Ash, which I then ended up doing because I was like, I just wanna finish the series. I want to be done with it, and I know if I don't pick up this book right away, right now, then it won't ever be done, and I'll have like the books on my shelf and whatever. So I picked this up, and this was my 1-star read. And yeah, I won't go into why I dislike this book so much, because there's a whole rant review coming that I don't currently have time to edit because I'm studying for an exam, which I have next Wednesday, but as soon as that exam is done, I'm going to sit down and edit that rant review, and yeah, it's gonna be big and probably quite rambly. But yeah, I did not enjoy this book, and I noticed that usually if I don't enjoy books, but it's just the type of like, I'm just usually bored throughout reading a book, then it's a 2-star read for me. However, 1-star reads are books that sometimes I might even enjoy in between, where I might have scenes where I'm like, okay, like, I mean, there's nothing about this book that I would say it's particularly good, but it, like, it's just, it's like the other one. There's some scenes where I'm like, I'm enjoying myself, but there's also a bunch of stuff that I really don't like. But yeah, the rant review is coming, so I won't go into that too much. Just know that it's like a definite 1 star for me, which, like, this is the 3rd 1 star that I ever gave a book. But anyway, with this book, I also finished the challenge of reading 2 or more tomes during Tome Topple. And then the last book, which, deduction, is my 2-star read, is Emma by Jane Austen. This is my first Jane Austen novel that I ever read, and with this book I finished the challenges of reading an adult novel, of finishing a tome that has been on my TBR for ages, because I think I bought this book like 6 years ago or something, or it's like the challenge is actually to finish a tome that has been on my TBR the longest. But honestly, I don't even know which books have been on my TBR the longest. I just know that this is a book that has been on my TBR for longer than I can remember. And then also the last challenge to read a book that is from a genre that I don't usually read. And of course, I don't usually read classics, even though you might think differently if you look at my October wrap-up, because I finished 3 classics somehow in that month. But usually I read 99% fantasy, so like everything that isn't fantasy is a genre that I don't usually read. Yeah, it's difficult because while I read it, I could see why Jane Austen is such a celebrated author, why she might have done a lot of stuff that like wasn't usually done when writing in her time, especially when it comes to female main characters, I think. But I just couldn't get into the writing, and I might blame that it's a classic on that, but usually, I mean, it takes me longer to get into the writing with a classic, and I think a lot of people are like that, just because if we're not used to it, it can be harder to get used to that older, more historical type of narration style. However, usually after like 150 pages, I can get into it, and I just couldn't with this book. And so I also started skim reading a lot. So I think a lot of like the more nuanced society stuff and like also satirical stuff, because I have heard that Jane Austen can be quite funny, just like went over my head a lot of the times, I think. And yeah, it just I think the writing style ruined it for me. It was just weirdly direct, and it didn't feel like she was telling a story, but like she was just, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then it just also, because I was skim reading so much, like the characters confused me. I didn't know who was who and whatever, but apparently there's supposed to be an Emma adaptation coming soon, so maybe I'll watch that and then reread the book and see how I feel after that. But yeah, so it just was a 2-star, even though it's kind of hard because, as I said, I can kind of see where a lot of the praise for Jane Austen is coming from. But I think everyone knows that Jane Austen is quite a famous and well-loved author. So I don't think it really matters if I give it 2 stars, just because that's what my enjoyment of the book was like. I was basically bored, 500 pages long. So yeah, that's a bummer, and I don't think I will read any other Jane Austen novels in the future. But that was it for this video. Tell me in the comments down below if you also joined Tome Topple and what you read. Also, if you have read any of the novels that I have read this Tome Topple, tell me your thoughts on them, tell me your takes on them. If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also subscribing. All the links to my social media are in the description box down below, so go and check those out, and I hope I'll see you soon. Bye!